It was 6 a.m. Newfoundland time, and we would be disembarking around 7:15. Coffee and eggs, breakfast was done. The adventure continued, and we were riding off into the rain with a full tank of gas, heading to Gros Morne National Park. We were in Newfoundland. It was a great sense of accomplishment, and we were happy that the gear was keeping us dry so far. It was an intense ride from Channel Port Basques to Rocky Harbour in Gros Morne National Park. We were riding north on the western side of Newfoundland. It was cold and the rain hitting us felt like pellets. The potholes were something to watch for, as well as for moose. There are pockets of incredible natural beauty that I was sure typified the Newfoundland experience, but alas, in the rain and fog, we only caught a few glimpses. As we got closer to our destination, we also became wetter and colder. The gear had limits and the conditions were bad. After approximately 3.5 hours riding in the rain, we arrived at the hotel. Success. The room was ready, and Jeanette was in poor shape from being in the elements for too long. I unloaded all our mud and rain-soaked bags and brought it into the hotel. The panniers were full of water, but I had all our stuff in dry bags. We walked to Sunset Cafe in the misty wet air of a Newfoundland day. As the storm cleared in Rocky Harbour, we found a much-needed wonderful meal. Big smiles on our tired, worn faces, but a feeling of immense gratitude for being safe, happy, dry, and sitting down to some really great food. Following lunch, we strolled around the harbor for a short time. It was a beautiful place. The pub was selling tickets for an Irish band and show, a kitchen party. This is typical to Newfoundland, and the hotel had their version for the guests. The best analogy is a house party in the States, but here the entertainment are the attendees, their instruments, and their wits. We went to the show, and it was an authentic experience. We learned a lot about Canadian culture and history through the music and the band's storytelling. There were people in the audience from almost every Canadian province, and it was nice to see how music can bring everyone together. There were a lot of travelers in the crowd that we met and talked with. The people working at the pub where the band was performing were joyful. Their enthusiasm and love of the music was clear as they sang every word and danced to every beat. It was a wonderful evening, and we had a glimpse into another place and culture. We took our time taking a few pullouts and side roads down to the water for what was the beginning of a day full of epic views. Newfoundland was delivering, and we were happy to be there. sun is shining, the weather is sweet. Make you want to move your dancing feet. Bob Marley had it right. The weather was spectacular, and we were heading to the Western Brook Pond boat tour in Gros Morne National Park. We were on the bike heading north from Rocky Harbour on the Trans-Canadian Highway, traversing the western side of Newfoundland. It would be a brief ride to the trailhead for the walk to the boat tour. We arrived at the Western Brook trailhead in our gear. It was a 35-minute hike on flat gravel terrain to the boat dock. The weather was cool, the wind was blowing, the sun was shining. There were practically no clouds, and the view of the Western Brook Fjord in the distance was pulling us down the trail. Arriving at the dock, a fair number of people were lined up already for the 12:30 p.m. boat. There were some familiar faces in the crowd from last night as well. Leaving the dock, the excitement grew. I had envisioned this place and this moment for a long time. The boat made its way toward the entrance of the fjord. The massive cliffs bordered both sides. We were taken deeper and deeper in. Everyone was excited to be there, and we enjoyed learning about where they were from, their travels, and sharing our stories. Most were Canadians from other provinces. The spray of the water, the sun on my face, the wind in my hair, and the splendor of all that was before us was intoxicating. As we moved further into the fjords, the features and waterfalls presented themselves. From the Tin Man in the cliff to the old man sleeping on the ridge. This was one of those places that was simply a picture painted by the universe. The boat turned once we made it to the end of the pond, and we started the journey back to the dock. A flurry of songs played in rapid succession. The Newfoundland music was cheerful, and you wanted to dance, hoot, and holler. Spirits were high, and it was a zen vibe. Leaving the boat, I continued to feel waves of gratitude and joy for this day's experience, especially being able to share it with Jeanette. Back on the bike and twisting that throttle in Newfoundland on this incredible day, all was good. It was late and we had a full day. I wanted to ride some more, but instead we headed back to the hotel. The hotel restaurant had a view of the bay, and sunset was going to prove to be magical. Dinner and wine followed by a gradient of colors on the horizon as the sun disappeared. It was a special day. It was as if the last 2 days of tough riding were building up to these moments as a reward for traveling such a long way. We were heading east. The plan was to stop about halfway between Gros Morne National Park, Rocky Harbour, and St. John's. The halfway point we were targeting was Gander. We woke up to a beautiful but chilly morning. We took our time and had a nice breakfast before getting ready and packing up the bike. I was excited to be heading in the direction of St. John's. After stopping at Norris Point for some pictures and to gas up, it was decided that we'd head straight to Gander. was about 40 miles until exiting Gros Morne National Park. These were the views we missed on the way in during the rain. The ride was relaxing, the views were filled with green, rugged mountains and lakes, and the weather was brisk. There was a special story that we learned about Gander. A couple of days ago, it had been the 17th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attack on the USA. Gander's airport was the closest landing opportunity between flights from Europe and North America. On September 11, 2001, during the 9/11 terrorist attack, all air traffic into the U.S. was diverted and shut down. About 38 planes and upwards of almost 7,000 passengers landed in Gander that day, which practically doubled the population. The story was made into a musical on Broadway called Come From Away. The real story of how the town took in 7,000 passengers is an amazing account of humanity and compassion. We were looking forward to spending the night there. I didn't know what we would experience, but just the act of being there would surely be something. Arriving in Gander was uneventful. How do you describe Gander, given the incredible story around 9/11? This in-between place or waypoint for people on the way to and from St. John's was the center of a miraculous story. The acts of kindness from the people here in the face of a horrific tragedy is the stuff that brings hope to the world. It definitely affirms the fact that you can't judge a book by its cover. We pass by people and places so many times during the day, and don't give a second thought to what is remarkable about them or about a place. Back on the Trans-Canada Highway, we were on our way to St. John's. It was mainly fast highway driving. I didn't bargain for the amount of highway riding on this trip. There had been way too much of it. Simply, there was absolutely no other choice. Too much riding to get to interesting places was something I would have preferred to avoid. About an hour and a half from St. John's, the dark clouds closed in, the temperature dropped, and the wind gusts were significant. Grappling with the wind for hours, the cold took its toll on both of us. We stopped a couple of times and continued to add layers. Arriving in St. John's, we were both fatigued from the ride. We knew tomorrow would be Jeanette's last day in Newfoundland and the weather would be rainy. I wanted to go to Cape Spear and Signal Hill. It would add less than an hour with stopping, and we had come so far, so we decided to go. Traveling by motorcycle and at times suffering certain conditions is the price to pay for the reward of arriving at an incredible location. Riding up to Cape Spear, the most eastern point in North America with the oldest Newfoundland lighthouse, the view was remarkable and that was the reward. I was ecstatic to be there and I wanted to take the time to experience Cape Spear. Jeanette was spent, and it was understandable. She had been on the bike 9 out of the last 12 days for about 1,600 miles in all kinds of weather conditions. This was an opportunity to reap the rewards that come with arriving at a destination after traveling a difficult path. Let me just say, though, that the wind at Cape Spear was crazy. The views of the Atlantic, the cliffs along the coast, and the entire historic site were iconic, and a real photographer would be able to do it justice. But nothing could rival being there. It's a remarkable feeling to have been to the most easterly point in North America, so far north from home. I really had the feeling like I had done something. Heading in the direction of our bed and breakfast, we passed through St. John's for a quick detour at Signal Hill. There's a lot of history there, but the first wireless transatlantic message being received by Marconi in 1901 is the coolest in my book. The views from the top of Signal Hill were epic as well. In the distance you could see Cape Spear. All of St. John was sitting below. Jeanette's riding on this adventure was done. 2 nights here and she'd be off to Florida by plane, and I'd be solo traveling again. There was a great feeling of having arrived for both of us. It was a feeling of accomplishment and a sense of appreciation for the journey we experienced together. Riding through the streets of St. John's and up another hill, we arrived at a nondescript house that was typical for the area and quite nice. It was a beautiful house and room. We valued being somewhere that had a feeling of home, even if it wasn't ours. We headed out to explore and grab a bite to eat, albeit on foot this time. St. John's has character. The streets and homes, the colors of the houses, the harbor and the bars, all remind you that you were in St. John's. Off to the Yellow Belly Brewery for more than a pint and some pub food. The music was hip and cool. It was Saturday night and we really were enjoying ourselves. The allure of George Street and the pubs weren't strong enough to overcome our feeling of being done for the evening. We were spent. Sometimes you just have to know when to call it a night. That part gets easier at our age. Our last day in St. John's, Newfoundland, and our last day on this journey together. The bed and breakfast was spectacular, and we slept well. We grabbed a taxi to Quidi Vidi village, about a 5-minute ride outside of St. John's. It's a small Newfoundland harbor fishing village with cliffs surrounding a cove. We took a tour of the Quidi Vidi brewery and followed it up with a tasting. Interesting history and great beer. One of their beers actually uses pure iceberg water. It was noon and we managed to wash down our wonderful breakfast and coffee with plenty of beer. It was brilliant and fun, and so a half pint more, please. By 12:30 p.m. it was time for a walk around the village and some pictures. There's a well-known restaurant and inn, Mallard Cottage. We managed to grab a table and have a super filling lunch. After exploring Quidi Vidi a bit more, we took a taxi back to the B&B. It was our last night here. We reflected on our time together during the trip and how much we enjoyed the adventure. Jeanette was heading home and had a 6:30 a.m. flight tomorrow. In the morning, I'd be heading to the overnight ferry back to Nova Scotia. I was going to start my long way down version traveling back to Florida.